How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Agoric Community Connect. We're back. There's a lot of questions we got to get to, so I'm going to keep my intro nice and short. If you're joining us for the first time, there are a lot of questions that we're building up in community, and we wanted to get a chance to answer everybody. So you probably saw those questions. We asked them in our Telegram and Discord, and I'm sure for those of you watching us live right now, there's going to be questions. So I'll do my best to kind of bring up as many as we can. We have a lot to get to, so if your question doesn't get answered, probably we're going to talk about it later on in the stream. So I'm going to do my best to just sift through what I can, but we're excited that for those of you watching us live, leave your comments, engage, retweet, share this out. We're super thankful when you do that. For those of you watching us in the future, we also appreciate that as well. Leave your comments, leave your questions. We'll get to them when we can, and hopefully you enjoy all the responses you're going to hear from our guests. I have three of them. I have Yulia, Dean, Rick, all representing Agoric, and Rick representing the DCF. There's three parts to this AMA. We have recent announcements and just some more clarity for community. The second part is current plans and an overview of the rest of the year and what the future will look like. And then the third part is tokenomics and a conversation with the DCF. Just build and the transition away from IST. There was a lot of questions around that, and some more clarity on how helpful the DCF is to Agoric, and how much more we're going to improve on the ecosystem, improve on everything that we're doing currently, and just give more details on what the future will look like. So again, appreciate you all joining us. I'm gonna bring my guests up, and let's get the conversation started. Dean, Yulia, welcome. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever part of the world you're in.
Yeah, I guess say
glad to have you guys back.
Toronto, yes.
Yeah, that good old East Coast time. It's nothing like it. Get the best of all parts of the world having a conversation on East Coast time. Yulia, how are you?
In sunny San Diego, very well, thanks.
Yeah, I could tell. I could see the sun coming through your window, so it's exciting. It's dark, gloomy over here on the East Coast. Lots of rain, but doesn't deter us from getting done what we're going to get done today. So I'm just
here in Toronto. Consensus, it's nice and sunny and warm and very active. So I'm happy.
Also then, New York is a gloomy city, I guess. All right. Well, let's get straight into it. We want to be conscious of the time, and I know there's a lot of topics that we want to hit. And what are the first things that we wanted to really discuss and expand a little bit on it was Dean, your letter to community. You announced a shift from this tech focus to more product focus. We restructured the team in a way to extend runway. And then, this is certainly a all-in approach to product. So can you explain these changes? Why was it necessary given market and investor sentiment? How do you see these kind of conditions shaping our strategy moving forward?
I just cut out and now I'm back. You can hear me now, right?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay. So, we've been building a platform for a long time. For people who haven't done this, platform is hard. It's partly hard because, you spread yourself thin to cover a lot of bases, and you get projects building, and those projects are in some sense venture bets. Not only does the platform have to succeed for them, then they have to succeed for their thing in order to drive stuff forward. And building a platform, especially, before you have user traction, is a long game, right? And, and we went out with the JavaScript where, we told people our focus was going out to Web 2 developers. This was, timing wise, middle of the bear market, but there were Web 2 projects that really still wanted Web 3 technology, access to the amazing stuff that we're all building. But they didn't want to build their own smart contracts. They really wanted just API level access, the same way they can invoke an API to send a Twilio message, to someone's cell phone. They want to invoke an API to mint an NFT or whatever it was at the time. And we considered that, but then we realized how critical what we had built was for enabling chain abstraction, which was a narrative we helped really drive in 2024. So, but even that was still a long game, right? That traditional blockchain rollout of DevRels, education, helping people build, helping them launch, helping them deploy. It just takes a long time with a lot of people focusing on a lot of different areas of the stack. Particularly with once we realized how important what we had was to enabling sort of end-to-end user scenarios, it was clear that, we could make a difference there. That was the important thing to drive. And narrowed down to orchestration, that got more traction, and there are people building with it, but it's still that long platform game where one of the bits of feedback we got from the market, from our customers, from our investors is, hey, build the first couple apps yourself, right? Targeted at something that users will directly value, that leverages the technology advantage that we have and so forth. And so that was a big part of the drive, is shift to something where we have more direct ability to deliver to customers. We have more direct touch on where it is that what we're building has value, and lines up with what the market needs right now, which is delivering simple solutions to users to take advantage of this stuff. As we see this big ramp up in engagement with businesses and end users on Web 2, interested in Web 3 technology and integrating into sort of normal finance. And so sort of now is the time for us to just build things that leverage this stuff, in order to get the excitement and traction around the technology we bring to market, around the stack, around the platform. We will focus on that product. And, to do that, we needed room to do that. We needed to not only room, extending the runway. That's great. That's important. That's valuable, instead of spending our time raising money. But it also meant we need to focus, right? We can't spread ourselves too thin across all the different layers of helping other people or educating other people on how to use this orchestration stuff to do, seamless multi-chain. We need to just implement the pieces we need in order to deliver value. And that's where a lot of the cut down for focus, work hard to get product market fit, work hard to have to solve problems that end users will pay for. And that is the key thing that I think will drive value and interest in the chain, is delivering some of those apps. So that's my, and that was a hard decision, right? Anyone who's been through that on any side of a staff reduction, knows how painful it can be for the people affected, for the people trying to decide, right? There's no scenario in which we were cutting things that we didn't want anymore. We were cutting things that we would love to keep doing, but we need to focus to get products out. And so that's what that was the transition.
And I double down a bit on the long go-to-market. Orchestration, we built an amazing technology. We had the platform. We were very satisfied with the value proposition is what it was bringing. Beyond the technological advancement, we could see that it resonates. Even now, we are seeing like orchestration as a narrative on the market. And we did have traction numbers. We launched the early access program, and we had more than 60 projects that we specifically picked and saw that there is potential in there. Now, those projects not only signed up and started to build on with orchestration and on Agoric, but they were actually in there asking for support, seldom asking for grants and financial support, and a lot of hand-holding. So 6 months after we launched, we took a step back and we looked at our pipeline, and what we were seeing was this top of the funnel, lots of interest, lots of need and interest for orchestration and requests to integrate. And we only had one project that was launched, and a lot of others that some of them are still like being handheld.
They're doing great stuff.
We want to deliver. Yeah, but just that long go-to-market that made us think this is not how we're going to bring value. And at the end of the day, the investors and the end users are asking, what's the real value generated today on the platform? So that also had a big influence on the decision to change what we do radically and to turn towards product something that we control and that can allow us to show product market fit much faster.
I do have to say, by the way, I was at a stablecoin conference last week in San Francisco, seeing how, people talking about the literally trillions of dollars in stables sent last year and how they're integrating into businesses and how it's using AI and all that sort of stuff. And of 6 panels with VCs, Pantera, A16Z, all these, folks from Stripe, et cetera, of 6 panels, on 5 of them, one of the panelists brought up orchestration, right? So it absolutely is a thing that people, know they need. And the thing is, we have unique power to deliver it. And, and I want us to directly, benefit from that rather than indirectly benefit from that.
Ryan, I think you both touched on the effect it had on internal, the effect to expect on external with users and just the ecosystem in general. But I think there's a part where people have been asking, and we don't often get a chance to speak on, or in general just don't have purview on this. But how have our investors reacted to changes within the company? So what are they kind of sharing from their perspective, their feedback on the decision?
So, we talk to our investors regularly. We update them on a fairly regular cadence on what's going on, what the business considerations are, what we see as our challenges, where they can help, that kind of thing. And they give us feedback, pretty regularly. So we meet with several of them on a fairly frequent basis. In the last 3 weeks, I've met with 4 probably. And sometimes also with investors that didn't actually ever, were not around or didn't invest in Agoric, but they've been interested in the project. And some of these are firms like Rockaway or Metastable or what have you. Some of them are individuals whose names I won't mention, but thank you guys. Thank you, folks. And so some of these things are stuff where they raised our awareness, both of, you don't have product market fit. I'm not seeing it. That project that's launching, it's not going to do it for you. What are you going to do to get something, Other projects have shipped their own apps. Are you going to build an app yet? It's like, yes, we want to build a first-party app, but we keep focusing on infrastructure stuff. It's like, nope, it's now time to just build an app, right? And so we get lots of good feedback, good input, prioritization, information on the marketplace, and guidance on, what we should do from a business point of view. And so generally, I've gotten more, I've gotten strong support for the shift to focusing on product, because they see that as a primary way that we can leverage all the stuff we've built to bring value to not just Agoric, but the Build network, the Agoric network, and so forth. And that it's sort of, responsible, prudent business to make sure that we have enough runway so that we're not trying to raise money in a desperate situation or any of that sort of thing, but instead can go, well, if you have a product, raising money around a product is a much better prospect right now than raising money around a platform. If we've got the mission, and there's plenty, and orchestration is a big deal, and we can see that it's getting traction, could you raise money around that? Yeah, maybe. It's harder. It's longer. Do you want to spend your time doing that, or do you want to ship something, right? And the answer is we want to ship stuff, right? And so, so there's a lot of that kind of guidance that really is clarifying that we get from them. And so generally, I think all the messages from investors have been positive about this, both positive and sympathetic. They understand that, we needed to, if we weren't cutting hard enough and deep enough for it to really hurt, we weren't cutting deep enough, right? And so, the staff reduction really hurt, right? There are people that we really liked the team we had. We like the team we have now a lot too. So just to be clear, so we will, now we go build something that people will use, and that's really what we're doing. That's what they are excited about, and will be continuing to ask us. Several of them said, I know you've got approximately what you're planning to build. I know you're testing out infrastructure ideas, you're testing out product ideas, you're doing discovery calls. As you come to any conclusions, as you learn things, run it by us. We want to hear, we want input, we've got thoughts, we've got people we can connect you to, and we expect to have continual ongoing interaction with both our community, of course, as Yulia will talk about later, and our investors.
Right, and I think with support and perspective from community as they begin to really understand the direction and product, decisions that we made so far, and just in general, really shifting from ecosystem to product led. We want to explain the logic behind reducing or no longer kind of supporting things such as doing hackathons or events for devs, and spending on KOLs to kind of create this hype around us. And I think there's some value, and I think the product, that curiosity will come from what we're building. But in general, there's a question for Yulia, but I'll kick this off. In regards to the KOLs, something that I handle, and KOLs in general are very expensive. As you move up the ladder of KOL in terms of followers and the amount of reach that they have, it gets really expensive really fast. And I've always advised the team that to make the spending make sense when it comes to this kind of thing. We've worked with different KOLs in the past who have worked with us because they're genuinely excited about what we're doing, what we're building, and they produce great content. But it doesn't make sense moving forward to look for that kind of KOL hype where you're in the realm of 5 figures automatically. And if they're genuinely not excited about it, they'll charge you even more. So it just doesn't make sense to work with KOLs. And in general,
I want them excited about the product, not the.
Yeah. I mean, they can get excited and they get excited, but it's a money game, and that's not something necessarily that we want to really get into, or something I generally advise. We find these people organically, like we see their content, and we have this conversation. But in general, our focus has always been on those kind of genuine kind of compatibility with people where they want to invite Dean, they want to invite us, they want us to kind of talk in these spaces, meet in person, and that's all organic. We done work with CryptoCito, who's a big KOL in the Cosmos ecosystem. Dean travels to the different events, and there's different opportunities that pop up there. People always would love to have one of the Agoric people on these panels, or just in general sharing that perspective. So that's the response to the KOL. I think it's just not it was never in the game plan, just because it gets way too expensive and it just doesn't make sense for us.
Okay.
Agreed.
And then Yulia on the hackathon developer event side of stuff.
I think on the hackathon side, I think that the optics are a bit reversed, that we invested a lot in hackathons. By the time I joined, I was actually very happy to see that Agoric had already learned that hackathon go-to-market is long, and had taken the commitment to disinvest. Actually, last year we've done one single Hackfest. It wasn't a hackathon, and it was a 2-3 days event in India, where the main objective was not to run a hackathon, but to actually launch our partnership with Rising, get exposed to their community, and with that launch actually an online curriculum, an online educational curriculum for developers that basically brings support for orchestration online, and that frees us up from resources so that orchestration can take a life of its own with the developers. So very limited investment in hackathons, and actually with a different objective than bringing in developers. We were very clear that hackathons audience, the very technologic developers that start try code and so on were not the target for orchestration. That was actually very resonating with big builders, with existing projects, companies that have already launched. So the optics are a bit different in there. We did not invest into that. Okay.
Yep. Yeah,
Maybe,
and
Sorry.
enhancing existing projects has always been, has been the thing that we focused on for orchestration, because it really, what's exciting about it is it adds value to everything everyone is doing by making this seamless access. Now we're gonna leverage that a different way. So.
Maybe to touch on this, I think the even bigger question that we wanted to address, that we've seen in different forms from a lot of people, was will orchestration API continue to be implemented in other projects, or have you abandoned it in favor of your product? And I think that's a key thing where we want to really be clear.
Right.
Dean?
Yeah. The platform exists, right? This is not went away, right? It's just, it exists. It works. People can build on it. People are building on it. Ellis and Omniflix and others. And so this is more about where is our attention, and our attention is on leveraging the platform that we all built. So we're not abandoning it. We're not racing to publish new APIs for people to explore, as opposed to building them so we can solve specific user problems. And so our focus will be on enhancements that are specific to achieving solving a problem a user really has, right? And it's got scale to the volume that the application really needs, and stuff like that. A challenge back to the platform is you're trying to solve many of the things that people might potentially do prior to them doing that. And by having it be very focused on, let's focus on key applications, then we can do just the things we need to integrate with to support user seamless solutions. So if we want to dive into what we're doing there, we can do that.
Okay. So a question that we received, Dean, another question that we received was about the new plans that we have for new product development. Starting with the Spike Fest, what was the key objective and success criteria for the Spike Fest, and which orchestration use cases have been prototyped? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Spike Fest was so it's both fun and important. It is dog food your technology to make sure you can move quickly with it, that there aren't any gaps, and that it solves the problem we think it solves. And so that was the goal. We had 4 projects in areas where the early access program, in talking to end users, talking to customers, talking to potential implementers, that gave us a lot of insight into what people want. We still need very fine iteration with customers on exactly how they can consume it, which parts are valuable, that kind of stuff. But the basic areas of yield maximization across chains, right? I've got some asset, I want it deployed. I don't care, whether it's on Solana or Base or Ellis or Osmosis or DYDX. I just want that yield. Can you make that happen? And right now, the crypto world is fragmented. To do some of those things, you've got to sign, I think it was 5 transactions on 3 chains and 2 bridges or something in order to get stake TIA, right? In order to get into the megavault on DYDX or whatever it is, right? It's just an enormous amount of friction for something that should be, from the user's point of view, I push button, I get that thing, right? My analogy with respect to chain abstraction, if I push button and I get a hamburger, I don't care what infrastructure it is. We need to do the same thing for Web3, and the Agoric orchestration is, a key technology that lets you do things that are impossible on other platforms, and we want to leverage that. So SpikeFest was implement some of those. Just the narrowest use case of them, right? Just let's make sure we can do that core thing end to end out to a user. Let's make sure that, you can have a swap aggregation where I can say, take one token, get to another, here, get to another token on another machine. And if you're going to use Osmosis, great. I don't care. Just get my token over there that I want, right? Automate that in a way that can be incorporated into larger scale end-to-end use cases where many of them include a swap. So the 4 areas were yield optimization. I deploy assets, and the system can help me easily not just move it onto Base, but move it onto Base into Compound, or pull it out of Compound on Base, move it over to Arbitrum into Aave, or move it from Arbitrum over into, over cross, bridges into Cosmos or what have you, right? And then, cross-chain staking, payment automation, and then AI integration, right? We know that the next generation of user experience will have an important AI component. Turns out there's some really valuable things for AI and orchestration, which I will tease you with now, and we will talk about some other session. But those 4 areas we dug into, and it was eye-opening in a bunch of ways. And so that was a big part of the Spike Fest, was do something concrete, do something end-to-end in order to find out what really we have, what really are the challenges. I'll give, so 2 dimensions, it was eye-opening. Yield maximization, yield optimization is really, where you can do it cross-chain is really cool, is really great. The other is cross-chain testing is really hard. Right? Multi-chain testing with some of your things are here, some are Cosmos, some are Ethereum. You got to do multiple chains deployed. You're trying to make sure it'll work across a sample osmosis, that kind of stuff. It's really hard. It's really challenging. It's something that we have more capability than most anyone to do, and we still need more. And that will be a non-trivial point of advantage as we improve that out. So.
And when discussing about SpikeFest, I'll step in to answer another community question about community involvement and requests, right? We've gotten requests from community to involve them and so on. So starting with how do we capture feedback and the type of feedback that we've been looking at 3 things: usability, how useful it is, what type of features and so on can be interesting, a demand signal, so an early traction signal, obviously not with prototypes that you see the full demand, but it's a signal. And third thing is what Dean was referring to, the blockers. What's hard? What's actually going to be holding us back or taking a long time? In terms of community involvement, with SpikeFest, we've tried to innovate a bit from the marketing side. With Miguel and the Ant-Man, we've launched this feedback loop a bit on Twitter. We would like now to go further, and we are launching actually a call to the community to deep dive with us, to run tens of interviews with crypto power users. We're looking for crypto power users that can help us understand better the space, the frictions, their needs and behaviors. So extending that, you'll see a message from our team these days.
I think, yeah, it makes sense. I think that with community, our call to action for feedback for community will help kind of this idea of product discovery. So Dean, as we kind of approach this phase, how do we ensure that orchestration-based apps, you really meet the needs of the user?
So, I mean, partly because by taking that to be the first requirement, right? We are building apps that users will value and pay for. Our technical advantage, our thing that helps make them unique and distinguished from other things in the marketplace, will be the power of orchestration, will be our ability to do, seamless cross-chain apps. And people we know need seamless cross-chain apps. We've gotten direct feedback. You can look at the market numbers. You can see, how many billions of dollars of tokens on one chain actually are brought over through some bridge mechanism from another chain. So we know that the demand is there for that. And now the question is, how do we access it? What problems do people have to solve? And then we get to provide that on-chain unique value because of our tech, but the tech is not the leading thing. I mean, solving user problems is the leading thing. So a big part of it is, we will take some of the stuff we did for the Spike Fest And the goal is to bring it out in the next couple months as a very narrow featurette that people can try out and sample. We will then iterate quickly, going through, discovery conversations, as well as try this. Let's see how people how people can use this and what they use it for, and how they use this in production as we iterate, on these different features that will eventually roll into a primary application that ties them all together. And so big iteration with the community, big iteration with customers. That's really what we have to do, focusing on, getting to product market fit as fast as possible.
Are you sharing some alpha?
Well, we have enough things to get through right now that I will stop now.
Okay.
So I think there's levels to this, right? So I think as we reach and do the feedback phase and do this kind of discovery, there's crypto power users, and then part of that group is large businesses, governments. Is there, this question for Yulia, is there any plans to kind of go after that market, or like what are we thinking there?
That is not a priority. Going after businesses is not a priority. This year, we are product first, hyper focused on building a product. Next year, we'll be in growth mode for the product. We do not intend to become a servicing business.
So then I guess for Dean, I think Dean could probably answer this a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
So what about teams who are still looking to integrate orchestration? Like how do you see us continue to support that?
Right. So it continues to be an open
first
platform. I mean, so it's a great question. And, some of these, by the way, also our investors asked, right? Not that they had an axe to grind, but they had thoughts and advice and input. So first off, it's an open platform. People can deploy to it. Yes, it's permissioned, but it's decentralized. To be clear what I mean by that, right? Agoric, the company, cannot unilaterally, does not have the voting power to unilaterally stop something. Does not have the voting power to unilaterally deploy something the community objects to, right? I'm not even sure that Agoric and DCF together could do that, right? And more as a policy, Agoric only ever votes in things that are about chain maintenance. So we don't vote on deployment of these things. We put it out there. We may be persuasive, but it's the community, it's the validators, the network operators, it's the build holders that do the voting and decisions there. So it is an open platform in that sense. And we continue to do things in the background to move towards permissionless, but our focus right now really is on the product stuff. But we do have the application channels in Discord that have modest ongoing DevRel support. We have office hours that we've had for I don't know how long it's Dan has been doing it for a couple of years, and it's awesome. And that's a place where people bring everything from network challenges to deployment, development questions, and some have shopped ideas to say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Does that make sense? That kind of thing. And so these are stuff that people should avail themselves of. And obviously we have, our partner in the overall network of DCF, where they've got, their more continuing focus on the development environment, platform, et cetera, mission. And Rick can talk about that later. Those are all elements that line up with, the platform keeps going, and the platform will keep going as long as people want it. So, and, we're supportive of it. We're just focused on shipping product, which I think will, also give example code, because we build largely open source stuff that will give example code that will make sure that we've dogfooded everything and it all works. It'll show what's usable in production, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think there's for sure a lot of opportunities, and I think Dean mentioned a lot of resources for people who want to continue to integrate orchestration, and we'll do our best to kind of answer those inquiries. But I think that gave good clarity on our position now that we're kind of this product first model, and I think that a lot of what we mentioned and what users will kind of be doing for us and supporting, and that kind of like drive of getting feedback from people is additive. We have a good plan of what our goals are with the products moving forward, and I think this is just to kind of get a good sense from people, like what else do you guys kind of want to see on top of our game plan of what we have planned to build. So I think this is pretty good. it sets us up for really to get competitive in this DeFi kind of landscape, and defining success with different partnerships. But we do want to move to tokenomics, and the transition from IC to build, and then who better than to help us, our friends from the DCF, and we have our good friend Rick. So in 1 second, you'll see him join us. So see you in a bit. Rick.
Greetings, everybody. Thanks for giving us some time for DCF conversation today. There's so much in that conversation. I know that you guys could have kept going on and on about it. I feel like I'm taking time away from that because I do want to learn more.
No. Happy to have you.
No, yeah, not at all. I think just as many questions we got for Agoric, there's a lot of questions that were geared towards DCF, and I think there's a lot of clarity we kind of provide. But one of the first topics here that we wanted to discuss is that we got the proposal through, and the voting went through and successful. So this transition from IEC to build, and now that build is becoming the primary gas token and is driving value accrual for build holders. How will that change support and simplify the experience for people with the apps that are being built on orchestration? I'll start with Dean. I think is a good person to kick us off.
Sure. And I'll set Rick up for some of this too. So the questioning the role of IST, especially as we went into orchestration, because orchestration was, let's figure out how to solve problems people find important, and then we'll, once we see that, then we'll figure out how to charge for it and how to tie it back to the tokenomics. But first, solve a problem that's valuable, right? And then figure out how you get paid for it, right? And so we were looking at what's the role of IST in orchestration. We found various mechanisms, but it remained, a thing that we had to think about. And it was inconvenient that build was so far away from the economics that it complicated things rather than adding value. And so there was considerations from a cost point of view that Rick can talk about. There were considerations from what's the right mechanic here to make this, powerful and exciting for people. And so DCF went off to think about what, here's this common good, who are the people that are benefiting from it? Do they want it? And if they don't want it, why are we operating it for them? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we did, as a platform, you do a lot of things that are for a common good, and IST in many ways was one of them. And so the transition to build from the perspective of orchestration is it lets us tie the thing that we have found in iteration with the market, iteration with customers, is the place where our technology is unique and powerful and no one else can do it. And we want to tie that back into the tokenomics. And so simplifying that area so we can focus on the part where we have unique value was the driver on our side of, it's like, there's all this apparatus, key message from investors in the market is focus, focus, focus. Let's stop spending time on that thing that might be great, but it's not the area we should be innovating in. It's not the area we should be spending our time on. And it was taking time. It was taking resources. It was taking attention, all of which we want to instead focus on product. So that's sort of the big driver on the Agoric side. And, and it dovetailed with what DCF was thinking about. So I will hand over to Rick.
Yeah, I mean, that really hits the nail on the head. I mean, put another way, the beautiful theory of having a decentralized stable token in the Cosmos ecosystem collided with the ugly reality of market conditions that said, great idea, but it's just not playing out. And we're focused on community good, and we're focused on being good custodians of the treasury that we have. And we had at some point in time to ask ourselves, the amount of money that we're having to spend on this good to keep it alive, is it really justified in terms of community adoption? And do we see a path forward to a sustainability model for that protocol? And those things at the end of the day fell short. And we gave it a good try for a year plus. And finally, the decision was made. And fortunately, the community backed it. And I think that is absolutely the right call. I think that this is a smart pivot. I think that putting, all the wood behind the arrow, so to speak, where the arrow is build, is what we want to be doing. We want to be delivering value to build holders. We want to do that in a clearly connected way with the strategy and the work that Agoric is doing. And this shift moves us closer to achieving that positioning.
And I should note, right, DCF did reach, talk to the various other parties that benefit from the common good, ICF, DROP, various others. And, and in some senses, as they refer to it, the good old college try. And it was a serious contender, but as with many people in this industry, they too have to focus, right? And it is entirely, they had particular things to focus on where they go, we really want it, but it's not something that we can operate. So it doesn't make sense for any of us to keep supporting it.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that there's complete clarity and understanding with the questions that were directed towards the DCF. So we kept the dramatics of the way that these questions were asked, just so that everybody could understand how well DCF and Agoric work together in the collaboration with the two of us. So for Rick, the first question on this list: now that Build is the gas token, will the DCF be entirely disbanded and no more funds are spent on DCF members?
Thanks for the preface to that, Miguel. I really appreciate it, because when I first looked at these questions, I'm like, wow, man, these are kind of brutal. Really? Is this where we're going? But the purpose of it is legit. And I like that you actually did this when I thought about it a little bit, because what it does is it pulls back the curtain on some of the misunderstanding that there is around why DCF was set up and what our role is relative to Agoric. And so we get a chance to talk about it. The fact of the matter is, a lot of the work that we do is behind the scenes, right? I mean, we're not standing up saying, hey, we should take credit for this, we should take credit for that. We're here to be a behind the scenes supporting partner for the Agoric ecosystem. But, and this is something that I think a lot of people miss, DCF is set up differently than a lot of the typical crypto foundations that we see in this space. Let me explain that. Most crypto foundations are focused specifically on a single project or a single token. Their existence in life is all about number go up, right? And in that situation, the structure that's been used is also different than the structure that we have. And what I mean by that is, in traditional crypto foundations, the foundation holds the big bucket of tokens, and then typically through grant making mechanisms, supports the dev team and supports the labs entity. Well, that's not the way things are set up here. First off, the DCF brief is much broader than simply supporting Agoric and the Build token. Our brief, as our name implies, is to advance decentralized cooperation. And so while Agoric is central to that purpose, it's not the only thing that we do, and it's not the only thing that we will do. Second, we don't hold the big tranche of tokens that we then distribute to the labs entity or to developers to support the protocol. That's actually held by Agoric. We have a much smaller lot of tokens, and from that lot of tokens, we're supposed to achieve that broader vision, right? So what we do is a little different than what a typical crypto foundation does. Our interests are very, very aligned with Agoric because our treasury is denominated in the Build token, absolutely positively. And so in the course of this lengthy bear market, we've put more and more of our attention onto the Agoric side of things, because it's obviously in our best interest for that number to go back up, or at least for that number to plateau, for heaven's sake. So, that's what we do. We are a broader foundation. We're much more akin to a traditional nonprofit foundation than we are to a crypto foundation. Similarly, we're not controlled by a DAO. We're actually a private entity. So while we pay attention to the community and we are concerned about what the community thinks, and we want to get community validation on a lot of our actions, we're not actually DAO governed, right? So there is a little difference there in the power dynamics between the parties. So I think that we've probably done a poor job of communicating the unique aspects of the way DCF is set up. And so we get a lot of these questions that are like, why aren't you doing X? And these other questions about, oh, you guys are, well, whatever, we're not going to go there. The point is, I think with better understanding of what we do, we would probably get fewer questions like that one.
Well, I also, actually, if I can add something here, IST shutdown, IST is just, one of these things where, Agoric builds software, the community deploys it, and then, DCF keeps how do we make this, a governed thing for the community, where IST in particular had shifted focus to being something for the extended IBC ecosystem. And so it was appropriate for DCF to drive that because it was about general decentralized cooperation, what I can refer to as, grease for the gears of commerce on the interchain. Now, there wasn't enough demand for that in the interchain for it to matter, but it was the right role. It was the right thing. But one of the things that I am excited about with IST, being sunsetted, which I love IST and I think there's a lot of value there, but it's got the wrong structure. We talk about that. But is now DCF can focus on other parts of that brief, other parts of enabling decentralized cooperation. And I think that's a huge win.
We've been so stretched on budget because of IST costs that it's really limited our ability to do other things. I mean, don't forget, and I'm sure some people out there know this and others don't. We were running a bounties program, we were running a grants program, and we had to pull back the funding from those things because of the change in the token price and the fact that we weren't able to cut back on our support for things like IST, which was largely priced in fiat. So, we had to make decisions to be responsible custodians of the treasury, and that's what we've tried to do.
I'd step in with just one more lesson for us on the Agoric side from the experience, and we've kept being asked, what are the lessons that we've learned, what would we wouldn't do the same, or what we would do. But I think that one important lesson, and we have to appreciate what we did with IST, is that yes, today it's the moment of stable coins, and there are like thousands of stable coins right now being created on the market, and we are not working in the moment. We are looking at what are the market trends and vibes, and there will be a consolidation, and only a few big stable coins will remain, right? And in there, however, the lessons that we've gotten also from deep diving into this field and so on, it allows us also to build on those lessons when we brought Fast USDC at the market. The idea that yes, we have technology, a platform that is really great for this kind of movement, and we can use it in a different way for stablecoins other than having our own on the market.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Because it's a place at the table for that conversation.
So with this change, Agoric shared changes in strategy and the details behind that. So Rick, from the DCF side,
yeah,
what are those details for y'all? What is kind of like this new build strategy for you all? What are like the goals for success to tell if things are working on the DCF side?
Yeah,
and any indicators for modification on your strategy?
Sorry about that, man. Stepped on you there.
Okay.
Thanks for asking. The build strategy is something that we started working on about a year ago, I think about 14 months ago. And this is something, again, people need to appreciate, that DCF was not responsible for build marketing until about 14 months ago. So we took over build marketing when Bill was sitting at 17 cents. So, unfortunately, we've been there for 17 cents to, a tenth of that. But we weren't there for the 75 to 17 part of things. We took over and started modifying strategy at that point in time. And from the beginning, we looked at strategy as being a multi-pronged, or the strategic approach to this as being multi-pronged. On one side, it's to increase demand for the token, right? So to increase buying activity. And second, it's to decrease sell pressure. And this is typically done through incentivizing holding of the token. So we've run a number of campaigns around those things, whether it's incentives or whether it's contests, et cetera. We also support a number of market making activities, some through our market making partner who market makes on a number of the exchanges that we have. Some of it we actually do directly ourselves, particularly on the DEX side of things. And you ask about success metrics. Well, the success metrics are what you would expect them to be. Number go up. Number of wallets increase, number of active people holding the token increasing, and number of tokens being staked increasing. Those are really the primary metrics that we're focused on, with that focus on increasing demand and decreasing sell pressure.
I think we generally know that, token price largely is tied to the market, right? I mean, we do things that you can see have a blip, but it's really a big part of the market. What will change that is people actually end users using apps on chain that matter to them from our perspective. And so that's
driving demand for the token, right, is absolutely essential, right? Because I mean, we can throw out incentives and do things like that, but by and large, those people are looking for short-term gains, and they're not the sort of constituents that really are going to become our core token holders that we love and we want to get our arms around, right? So, yeah, it's been brutal in terms of market conditions. I think probably at this point in time, it's safe to say alt season didn't happen this cycle, right? And we're probably not going to see an alt season. And the fact is, even if there was an alt season, the fact is there's so many more alts in the market now. It was spread out amongst that entire larger set. So the cumulative or the net effect on individual alts was actually lower than what we would see in previous cycles. So yeah, we are always going to be at the whim of the market cycle and market factors, but to the extent that Agoric can increase demand for the build token, we think positive things are going to happen. And what we're trying to do at DCF is we're trying to create the conditions that would support that success, whether it's liquidity, whether it's visibility, brand recognition, educational materials, etc.
And on kind of like the aspect of positivity, you mentioned exchanges, where DCF has helped Agoric specifically get on HTX, Bitmark, CoinsPH. Can you share with us other kind of success and major contributions that the DCF has done for Agoric to justify current structure and continuous funding, etc.?
Yeah, and don't forget that Agoric does not fund DCF. DCF has a separate treasury, right? So, what we're doing is DCF expenditures. And in terms of success metrics, yes, we've got the exchange listings that you just mentioned for sure. We also continue to work on tier 1 exchange listings, and I know a lot of people have questions about that. I spoke with General Counsel before I came in, and I said, how much can I tell people about what's happening on that side of things? And the advice was to keep it shall we say, agnostic in terms of names. I can say this, who the big 3 exchanges are? We're engaged with all of them in some fashion, okay? The problem is that the conditions for getting listed on the tier 1 exchanges have become more strenuous, particularly for an existing project that has an existing track record. If you're a new token coming to market, particularly a new token coming to market that has a large pool of coins that you can share with the centralized exchange,
funny how that works.
Listing becomes a much easier thing, right? If you've been around for a while, they're looking at your volume figures, they're looking at your price performance, they're looking at your volatility numbers, and those are all the fundamentals that we at DCF have been trying to shore up. So when we go out and do things like listing with exchanges like Bitmart and CoinsPH, really what we're trying to do there is we're trying to achieve better geographic coverage for different audiences that are also being targeted through coordinated marketing activities so that we can increase the number of token holders, we can increase the volume that's happening, and we can create a better narrative for when we're dealing with these tier 1 exchanges who either want high attractive performance metrics or 6-figure payouts to get listed. So it's not perhaps as, I know people look at it and go, oh, well, Trump coin got listed everywhere. Why can't you guys do it? You're a more legitimate thing than Trump coin. Yeah, right. Well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of quick money to be made there, and those guys are smart, and they're going to go that way, okay? Those situations are not comparable. It's apples and oranges. But sorry, I kind of strayed a bit from your question, Miguel. To go back to what other things have been successful, right? We've got those listings we've mentioned. We were running a bounties and grants programs. You heard that. We had to cut back on those things. The grants program did produce some outputs that are useful for the community, including the range integration, which gives you a whole new set of monitoring tools for the Agoric ecosystem. The Tribbles meme coin was a grant. We all know that hasn't launched yet, but that hasn't launched for a variety of reasons related to market. But again, that was a grant. That wasn't something that was being built in-house. We also have represented Agoric at major crypto conferences across the last couple of years, and we've picked up the tab associated with a lot of the marketing that happened there. We've done a number of DeFi incentive projects. We've done a number of other incentive projects, like, for example, the contest that's running with Seed right now, which is a trading contest on Gate, which is already delivering 6-figure increases in volume numbers over on Gate. So we will continue to do that sort of work. Also, We've created a number of educational materials. We've worked with KOLs. CryptoCito was somebody that DCF was working with, for example. And we also manage the IP and the corporate matters. We are the people who take care of the economic committee. We've taken care of interprotocol. And we've also, in terms of things we do that aren't purely agoric, we now are the people who are helping shepherd the Endo project in the hardened JavaScript world. Endo, which you guys know, is also, well, actually, I see we're down to 2 minutes left. Before I keep prattling on about this, I need to stop, don't I? Sorry.
We need to continue in a different meeting for sure,
Yeah.
and deep dive into that.
I want to add one thing on the listing thing, because I don't want to have to revisit it again. As you mentioned, crypto moves very, very quickly. People, I'm looking at you, Provost. Yes, we read your questions. People compare us like, well, Celestia token did awesome. Why didn't your token? It was a year later. Well, the answer is it was a year later, right? It was listing, not right as FTX died and then Celsius and then Binance being investigated and then Binance US shut down and all these things. It wasn't over that period. It was after people got over that, and now they were looking for something to do. And they did a fabulous job of marketing, and it's easy to see things, in hindsight that you maybe should or shouldn't have done. But the difference in timing, the difference in era is actually very significant. Yeah. We're a US company versus all these are non-US. And so there's all these elements where the details really do matter. We started, the listing world as part of a BD thing. Maybe that was a mistake. It was a good idea to hand it off to DCF. I'll tell you that. But anyway, so back to you, Rick.
No, just one final thought on the IST thing, and then I'll be quiet on this because I know we are out of time. There's been several people say, oh, well, why didn't you guys turn that into a yield-bearing stable token? And, yeah, we are seeing success with that strategy in the marketplace. Unfortunately, that was not practical with the way the tokenomics were designed for IST. And it was basically rebuilding the entire token if we wanted to go down that path. Right. And that did not make sense. Okay, sorry, Miguel. I'm quiet now.
No, you're good. I think that was a good way to wrap. I think there's a lot of information for people to kind of digest. An hour-long conversation, I think, full of good detail and explanations and clarity, and we got through a lot of the questions that community were asking. There's one last question I'm gonna ask, and it's just wrapped with complete clarity. Moving forward, who are we? Who is Agoric?
Well,
happy to take that.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Dean.
Oh, well, blockchain product company building seamless, intelligent, cross-chain applications. Subtitle, powered by orchestration. Right? So we solve the fragmented crypto workflows to get these, simple, intuitive actions by end users. That's our goal. That, I think, is got to be the critical game changer for the crypto industry. Yes, there will be ongoing stablecoin adoption into, and adoption into TradFi, but to get end users, you got to solve their problems and not inflict on them all of the fragmentation that is valuably increasing, right? And the world is UI talking to orchestration, talking to microservices. That's how Web 2 works. That's how Web 3 is going to work. And our power is unique in that space.
Dean, Yulia, Rick, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me and then taking the Community Connect. And as mentioned prior, hopefully we could come together again, continue answering questions and continue to provide clarity and just, build in public, as we say.
Thank you for the chill vibes, Miguel.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks.
Maybe too chill. Let's bring a little bit of excitement. I appreciate everybody who was watching us live. I saw the comments. We appreciate that. Yulia, I love you. Hello from Amrock, and there's a couple other that came up, and we'll get to those questions as they pop up, and we'll come back and revisit. If you're watching us live, appreciate you. There's over 250 plus watching across YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and I know people in Discord are watching as well. We appreciate all you guys. And then for those of you who watch us in the future, it'll live on our feed on X. It's on YouTube. You can rewatch it on all the platforms that we streamed it on live. And again, we appreciate all the retweets, comments, questions, everything that you all leave for us after the fact. A lot of information to kind of digest, and any more clarity from the questions that you asked with the responses that we gave, and any other thing that you all want to kind of dig a little bit deeper, we're more than happy to kind of provide that context if possible. So again, thank you all again for joining us for this Community Connect, and I will catch you in the next one. See you then.